qualified to run off in the Olympics. Unlike man's rules, we get a crown for just finishing. Real gold, make a diamond feel old. Thank God, heaven real, where we sit is no blemishes. Equated formula, I give him to the chemist.
Welcome to another Prophetic Configurations podcast special with my last and final guest, Rachael Burton from, is it Brisbane or Perth?
No. You've got to go all the way over to the west. We're in Perth. Yeah.
Perth.
So we are further away from you. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Perth,
When you
Australia.
said no, I was like, is Brisbane bad? But don't we have friends in
Brisbane is
Brisbane?
lovely.
Okay.
Brisbane is where I would live in winter. Brisbane's beautiful. But no, I live in Perth. I live in WA, and it is a little bit, it's rated the most, when you think of city and substantial dwelling, like a number, thousands and thousands of people, it's the most isolated city in the world. So we are far away from everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it. I can't wait to go over there. I've already gotten some invite from Emma, my sister. You know Emma.
Yes, I love Emma.
Yeah, Emma and my other sister. Oh Lord, please forgive me, sister. You know who I'm talking about.
Jazz.
But she's invited me.
Dennis. She's amazing. Yeah, there's a few of us. We're all inviting you. Lou.
Yes.
Australia's inviting you. Officially welcome. Come.
Now you know what's crazy is I was doing a Lyft ride several months ago, and I was picking up two guys from a mall, and they were from Perth. Like, yeah, when I told them, I was like, oh, I have friends in Perth. They was like, oh yeah, it's lovely, it's beautiful. Yeah, they were there on like some business. Something business related, but yeah, it was just like I had just got back from Costa Rica with Josh and with the whole crew, and I picked these guys up, and I was like, okay, Lord, you're calling me there, so we gotta get that figured out. But
yeah,
anyways, well, let's jump right in, shall we? Because I'm not going to hold you guys long, but I really just, I can't remember the first, there was a video I think my wife sent me. You were teaching on about, I want to say it was somewhere around the lines of spiritual warfare, and just maybe how you were pressing through some things. And it was just a really, really good, practical teaching, and just you were talking about, you were revealing your human side of how you were kind of struggling with some things, but yet understood that your foundation and your peace was centered in Christ. And so it was months ago, but it stuck with me on that. And so of course I've got to see you do some things with Rhema, our dear friend and sis, and since then, it seems that the circle in which the Lord has given Rhema tends to grow larger and larger. As we go back and forth, traveling with her and some of our other teams and peers, I feel like at this time there's just no better way to do ministry than with those that see you, know you, understand what God's called you to do. And I know when I first began to attempt, I want to say this. I didn't attempt to be obedient. I was obedient, yet I was attempting to do what I thought was apostolic, what I thought was ministry. So, you're doing the best that you can with what you have, and I find it to be no better way to do life and ministry with those who have, who've gone, a couple of miles ahead of you, or are plowing the same direction that you are. But I love the fact that all of us carry different types of graces, and we embody Christ in a magnitude that maybe others haven't reached yet. And that's why I love the fact that team ministry is something that God is highlighting. And in the midst of highlighting team ministry, he's calling all of us to die all over again.
Yeah.
And so,
Regularly. Daily.
so yeah, so Rachel, bring us into your journey with the Lord in regards to, or let me ask the I'm not sure if because we didn't even talk about going over the question things again, but I do remember sending you some questions. You were like, "Oh, this is good. This is good."
Yeah, they're great. They
Yeah,
challenge
yeah.
me to think like, what am I doing? Why? Why am we doing this way, Jesus?
Tell us about your entry point into the kingdom of God. Were you coming from a traditional background, a Lutheran background, Presbyterian? I mean,
Yeah.
bring us into when you knew when the Lord was bringing you into kingdom dynamics that everything was getting ready to be toppled down. Bring us into that.
Well, let's just say that I've lived a life that is in contrast anyway. I am a child of a missionary. So
Mm.
already the trending way doesn't work.
Oh.
So
Mm.
three daughters who lead comfortably. And
Mm.
so we were born and raised and lived our primitive years, so up until I was 18,
Mm-hmm.
in Botswana, in Africa, and in Zimbabwe for high school. And so I was, my parents sort of led in a more charismatic way that come out of Assemblies of God ministries in New Zealand. But we had also learnt to be culturally appropriate and to learn how to love the dynamics of tribes, nations, tongues, right? And to lean into that and to celebrate that rather than to make something Western or traditional. Jesus isn't white. And so we were very big on also learning cross-cultural Christianity, without allowing a mixture of worshiping other gods in there, because there's so much in the culture that is about the higher power, right? And so
Mm.
lots of learning from my parents, and then obviously we're living in that, so lots of learning for us. So I would say all three of us daughters are naturally pioneering in our nature, and thanks to the Lord, my father and my mother never viewed that as a negative as women. So we were always championed to lead. And I think in a third world country, if you're in the right situations with the right leaders around you, even from a teaching perspective, all our teachers, there was a lot of championing to be something. Like, we weren't told to be less. I don't know if that was just to help the country grow, help this nation be better, but there's a real championing to be more, to lead strongly. So I'm grateful for that.
Mm.
When I moved to New Zealand for 6 years, and they were like the worst years of my life, to be honest.
Mm.
And I really had a crash in life and with the Lord. I like, God and I went head to head. It was a real my pride versus His holiness. But it was this friction for me, I think, just from childhood, and I had a lovely childhood, but there was a lot of Christianity that was familiar to me that I didn't always know Christ. I just knew religion and would lay my life down for it. And so then I'm struggling with the fact that I'm living a sacrificial life without the reward of intimacy. So we kind of went head to head. And so the way that I've seen the church grow over the years globally is that we do our best and then we realize we haven't got it all right. But I think the Lord's really gracious in that, and merciful really, is that He allows what needs to grow in that season to grow. And so what happened, this is like the mid 2000s. So this is in the span of the last 15 years. Think the earlier 10 years of that 15 years. The Lord moved me here, and we, with my sister and others, helped birth a church. And it was rooted and grounded in intimacy because the Lord met me that way. And so I went on a real encounter journey with the Lord where He would meet me in my room. You read all God's generals,
Yeah.
and you just get blasted in your bedroom, and you don't want to go out and help your neighbor because you're like, no, the Holy Spirit's in my bedroom. So it has this swing, this pendulum swing of intensity, but He births and, well, He impregnates, and He does stuff in that season that is so wonderful. Even though my character still needed things, I still needed some deep inner healing. I still needed deliverance. Lots of beauty was formed in that I'm not perfect, but He uses it that way anyway, reality. And then, of course, just did the journey of inner healing and deliverance over that 10 years. And it was not planned, but that team that started that church, it's a beautiful church here, we're still great friends, named Paradox Church, where we were all growing in our seat, not knowing that we were fivefold, and discovering that together. And so it became a fivefold team that led that church, and it was new to us. We were kind of like, who can teach us this? And there was no one, kind of deal. So we were pioneering blindly, but letting the Lord kind of lead us, and also sharpening each other really strongly. So as a more, at that time, I would have said I sat in the seat of a prophet. I was very prophetically wired, prophetically gifted, and I was sharpened by an apostle and a shepherd so much. Like it got hot, you know, but it was so good. Like there was a lot of healing. There was a character confrontation, and I think with the prophetic wiring, you feel things really strongly, and so it's harder to embrace some of the pain journey that comes with dealing with self and acknowledging wounds. And so I'm super grateful that these were people that I was relationally close with enough that can happen healthily. And so I learned a lot about fivefold through that. And it was only when the Lord like literally lifted the grace of me being there after 10 years, and I was going to be there for forever. It's an incredible crew. That is where I dreamed. That was how I understood church culture. I still bless them. I think they're doing incredible things. But the Lord pulled me out, and it was ugly for me. Like I've done seasons where it was hard, but the Lord met me in deep intimacy. But in this season, he didn't. It was just ugly and quiet and gross. And
it was boring.
It's horrible. And he did a mind renewal. I found myself going, actually, is this the most effective way? Is it working? Is this happening? And it wasn't in criticism to the way many churches are run anymore. It was like, but what about this discipleship? What about these people? Why is that not happening, but this is happening? And I think every single church structure is going to have their wins and their ineffectives. It's just the reality, right?
Sure.
And I just think that one method will work beautifully in one city and it will crash in another. And it's really to do with what's required in that land and in that atmosphere. And I would say multiple diverse types are needed in one place, and then they need to work together. That's the many streams as one river.
Yeah.
But the Lord was really pulling me out to help encourage and birth the house churching and champion it really here. And that was confronting for me, because I didn't even believe in that model. I thought
me, oh my God,
like
me either.
I was like, come back to the block, you know. But he did a work in me, and he's still doing it. I am still in no man's land in so many ways, because I've let go of the way I led before. I've let go.
Come on.
And even the way I led before, I would say, wasn't the mega church style. We were very team leading, we're very servant leading, and I think it still works healthily and beautifully in that way. But when you shift to what the Lord's asking of you, and you help birth and train a house church movement, you're not leading the same way. You are letting them lead, and you are facilitating and championing and coaching, and it's highly relational. And then within that, wanting regional leadership to unite, again, it's like, I'm not really wanting to lead that, I'm wanting to unite that. It's two different things. And so it's a really different style of leadership, where there isn't a top dog vibe at all anymore, but there are people who will sit in that momentum for a moment to gather or to cluster or to encourage, and then it switches to the next leading voice that needs to then do a next, and it's just learning to let all of those sit at a table together. So it really exposes if you have insecurities. And it exposes your worth, because all of my worth that I had, that I would consider a holy worth, like you don't hold your role too tightly, but you do recognize your calling, all those things actually had to dissolve. Like I was like, I need to be content that I'm apostolically prophetically apostolic. I have to be very comfortable if that fruit only comes through my children. Like it was just like, Rach, authenticate it, be it. And then what he would do was he would make people come in front of me, and in the authenticity of our relationship, more stuff happened. And it was so easy. Like there's so much grace because it's just relationship led.
Yes.
But it's so different to being office work hours, ministry role led. It's just so different.
Yeah.
And I've had to work with that daily rhythm of today we're doing basketball with my kids and and then it's like, oh, today I've got a phone call with so and so, and it just flows like that every single day. And letting that, it had to snap off me any sense. And I love order. I mean, even in a kingdom way, I love order. But letting too much order break off me, so I could just flow in the flexibility of grace of relationship and grace of being. Like it's just going to happen as he wants it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to authenticate it. Like my job is to live in the purity, imperfectly, but live in the purity of how he's designed me and my intimacy with him and what I believe he's cultivating, the dreams, the thoughts that go through your head while you're cooking, just letting that permeate just through dialogue and friendship. And it's so strange because he just constantly opens doors and moves things and connects things. And I'm super stoked to like chat, create something, and then hand over. I'm pretty happy at delegating and letting go. And so just realizing that a lot of the time you're just connecting someone to something, or house church, and it's the context of kingdom where you're not the person who has to do 50 million things. You're the person who has to do you really well. Do you know what I mean? It's just taking responsibility for that. Yeah. So that's a bit of a context of
the Lord shown you concerning the overlapping and the distinct functionality of local assembly and regional fivefold interaction, and how we as fivefold leaders can work with those in a that maybe still struggling to come out of the traditional system of church. What does that look like for you when you are stewarding a ministry that is very grassroots from the house?
Yeah.
How are you walking with individuals who are still wrestling with the traditions of man and just the systems of church, of just having to always do or be busy and all of that? How is your community and you walking with those individuals as they come into what God's called you to steward?
Sure. Well, I think the attempt to do this before was called networking, and it was sort of bigger churches did a lot of networking, and then you became affiliated, and then there was a lot of what you would call training and equipping and mothering and fathering. It was all attempted and done, and much of it bore great fruit. But it was done within the systems and the I guess the expectation of the fruit being church growth and regularity of service and equipping through services, etc. And those things I don't think they're necessarily wrong. There's a place of effectiveness in them. It just misses other things, right? And so I think the goal isn't that we turn around. I mean, it can get deeper and deeper. You can go into even the spiritual dynamics of the systems that are in place and what needs to come down, because there is false honor. There's things there that are messed up, and I had to kind of confront that in me first. These are things like, oh no, I'm starting a worship and prayer time and it's in the same space, same area as other churches here. I'm taking their space. They're already doing it again. I don't want to cause offense, or I'm stealing their flock, and really having to break that off and go, that is an old mindset. That is an old way of thinking. It is a false honor. Jesus is the head of the church. And yet within that whole spiritual war and breaking that down, going, how do I show honor? How do I show love? How do I show that I'm not against the church? Like, we are one. There's no us and them, no matter how different our methods and ideologies might be. And so really trying to do that dance with humility means you go low and you go slow. You really do things in obedience to Jesus. So if it's going to offend other people, so be it. But then at the same breath, you do things at the pace of the people. And so there's this thing where sometimes he'll say burn and bust, and then other times he'll say take it very slowly, take a few years, and you've got to know which one he's doing. So we've done some burn, we've done some, we're doing this, we're hosting this, we're bringing a change in language, we're shaking some of the ideologies, and then we've also been like, we're going to quietly just make sure all these relationships are healthy and there's a good grip, because the friction has been enough now and people are now thinking and looking. And I don't want to be the person who's like, yes, let me help you change your mind. I want to be the person who they can then dialogue with and feel safe with, instead of that I'm like, oh, well done, you've switched on, you know? So there's this thing where you're just gently holding. And I need to acknowledge, especially in Perth, so everywhere's different, but in Perth, there has always been, for as long as I've known Perth, and I've been here 17 years, is this push and this hunger for unity in the churches. Now, it might be that it's been a highly pastorally led thing. So it's just, you know, everyone's friends and we all help each other and we co-labor to feed the poor. But it's still there. It is a humility between churches that is extraordinary. And I don't think that's everywhere. So we don't have a friction that I can bump into too strongly here, unless it's part of the ones that haven't connected into that unity in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So there's so much groundwork that's been done that all that's really shifting is this understanding of apostolic ecclesia governance, you know, the right way to do spiritual warfare, which is through repentance and the leadership of the Holy Spirit, you know, the union of in me first, then through me journey. And just bringing that wisdom and healing some of the wounds, truly, to be honest, of what's been before, to let that happen. So it's had ground for favor here. It's just been thoughts and ideologies and trust to even go beyond what we already know is working here. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. So with that, how you how would you encourage those who are called to move um, untraditionally? That, you know, how do you encourage those who are being obedient? They're coming out, right? But from a leadership aspect, like, what would you encourage leaders who've been used to being in the capacity of church functionality systems, right? And they're literally having to die
Yeah.
to the way in which we thought it was supposed to
Yes.
be done. What,
Yeah.
what encouragement can you give, especially women who are apostolic, prophetic in nature? Uh, how would you encourage them to move into the space that God has been pressing on them to do? And yeah, what's your advice for them as they die? They're going to feel the tearing, they're going to feel the ripping, they're going to see and hear the imploding, but yet they're not permitted to go backwards. They're going to have to pioneer something until the body grows up together, catches up.
Yeah.
How would you encourage leaders that are wrestling from that standpoint, staying put, just being, you know?
Again, this is where this is where humility comes in, and I know we use that word really easily, and even I feel I'm saying it, I'm like, oh, but where I have a revelation in the Lord and I need to bring that to the table doesn't mean I know all things about the Lord. And so the humility that comes through is what you're sifting and learning, and you present it in a I'm learning this and I'm implementing it. Like, you can't share a revelation and not be living it. So there's an implementation and a looking for the fruit in your own life. So for me, I do believe I can live apostolically in my own home with my children, and the fruit comes where I am placed. I am not restricted because I don't have a church and I've lost my role, or I live out what the Lord is teaching and equipping in my life. But to go into a room or to a bunch of people and say, hey, you've got it wrong, you need to do the right thing. Yes, there's a place for that. There are certain voices that do that well. And if that's what the Lord's saying, do it. For me, I've gone in going, this is what I felt the Lord is speaking to me. See the fruit. Because if I look at their lives, even if they're living in an old model or an old wineskin, the Lord is still speaking to a lot of them in certain things, and they're bearing fruit. And so the humility comes in recognizing that they are not out of the will of the Lord or lost. There are just mind frames in certain things that are not in the same push that the Lord has got you in. And so you don't kind of go in thinking you're ahead or advanced. You go in thinking this is something the Lord is revealing to me, and I'm going to test it out. So test my life, test my heart to see that. Whereas they're going to be doing what the Lord is speaking to them, and you will still see good things in their life that are supposed to equip and support you in your maturity too. Because the goal isn't like who isn't hearing the latest thing and we should be the messenger, even though we're all called to prepare the way of the Lord, right? The goal is maturity in the Lord and union with him. And so I'm looking for Christ in you, and I'm hoping you're looking for Christ in me. And so when we're bringing the message with that kind of posture of, hey, Christ in you, I'm talking to you. This is what Christ in me is saying. It's a very different message to, you've got it wrong, I've got it right. Can I bring that to you? Or I'm going to strangle your brain because you don't understand. Because Christ grows me at a very different pace and place than he does others. Like Raymer and I are great friends, but we boom differently. We move differently. We're both apostolic. She'll learn and run in something, and I won't run in that for a long time because he's asking me to run in this one first, and both are holy. And I think we need to look at the church and go, where is the Lord in that? Where is the Lord in you? And then reach to that and speak to them, champion that, and then also reveal this is what the Lord in me is doing, and let them see that. I mean, you can boldly run your thing or do your thing, but to come into another person's and confront, that's something where you're going to have to say, the Lord's told you to do that, John the Baptist moment, then and there. Otherwise, live it, do your best to be at peace with everyone is still the cry, whether you're an apostle or not. You're still longing to walk in that kind of being obedient to Christ rather than trying to be in conflict and confronting everybody. That's me, though. And I think that comes from also a very strong sharpening of the pastoral around me. So a real love for the sheep, a real love for the body. And so even though I want to be who I am, I want to be Christ-like. I don't want to just be an apostle. And so I'm longing to let all this thinking that I have and all these strategies and how I come through as a shepherd still at times, and come through, in clarity and in kindness and with all my pictures and the prophetic. So I'm not trying to target things apostolically. I'm trying to target things as Christ, whether it's my children in that moment, and I parent my children very differently because of that at different times and their ages, or if it's my spouse, or if it's me, you're constantly looking for what is Christ saying, but also how is he saying it? When is he saying it? And in what way is he saying it? Because that matters to him massively, and the fruit of that shows, I think. Yeah.
You said, wow. You said a mouthful there. Said a mouthful there.
Sorry.
Because
this is insane. We qualified to run off in the Olympics. Unlike man's rules, we get a crown for just finishing. Real gold, make a diamond feel old. Thank God, heaven real. Where we sit is no blemishes. Equated formula, I give him to the chemist.